All right, man. I'm very excited for this. I read with your background, the extensive opportunity we had to kind of like discuss what you do, and I could ask you a few specific questions just related to your feedback that I'm wondering about.
Yeah, sure, man.
Okay, so I'm put on my mentor glasses if you don't mind.
Go for it, man.
All right. So, who are you and why are you here?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. My name is Dr. Ryanterao, Psych Sensei. I'm a esport and clinical psychologist, and I work with individual players, coaches, teams, organizations, from the amateur all the way up to the professional level in many different titles.
Awesome. Thank you for your introduction. This is one of the most, I would say, relevant discussions we're going to have in terms of esports and gaming because the development I've experienced in esports is very different from, I would say, most cyber athletes or other characters. Mostly because, let's see, the way I would describe it is there wasn't anybody studying esports specific psychology when I was younger. It was more like, hey, you have a psychologist or a therapist, etc. You might mention esports to them, but they don't actually understand like what's happening in terms of whether or not you'd be able to process tilt effectively and efficiently, right? And that there's not a
hmm
lot of other people who can uh, determine whether or not the way your not just mindset, but the way your biology is working in alignment with your mind when you're actually playing on a stage and it's very stressful, or you're trying to uh, kind of calm down from a very impressive win or a very crushing blow as a loss. And so these
hmm
these things, I didn't have anybody to kind of teach me these things. And so this
Yeah.
discussion with you is very important.
For sure. Yeah, there is no Little League, League of Legends or Pee Wee, Call of Duty, that there is in traditional sports. And I think that there's a lot of structure in traditional sports, a lot of training and a lot of habit formation from that you get from being a kid and being around a coach and learning what an actual coach is and all those kinds of things. And yeah, so when you go to esports, you're typically learning all this stuff by yourself in solo queue. So I think it was a cool opportunity to come and share my expertise with esport players and gamers and people who just like playing games or want to get better at something. So I thought it was a perfect match for what I was interested in and what I was studying. Yeah.
So my first question for you, and Dr. Yato, excuse me because I'm not familiar with how psychology works. I'm not a health professional. I'm a mentor. So the only experience I have with youth is mentoring them in terms of whether it's being a youth mentor at the local group home I work at, or it's doing some type of career development mentoring. So
hmm
my health related experience is very limited. And so my first question for you is, how do you see things such as pride being misused amongst the youth?
That's a good question. Yo, when I'm thinking about pride, I'm thinking about ego, right? And when I think about ego and I think about pride, like it's good to have, right? Because you need a sense of self, you need to have a sense of confidence, you need to have a sense of, what you're good at. And at the same time, it can be very bad because sometimes your ego or your pride gets in the way of you get reaching your best self or learning that new thing or being willing to do the things that you haven't done before to improve, or the emotional reaction of you getting butthurt or salty that you lost the game doesn't really allow you to look inward or reflect on how you could do things differently, how you can do things better. So I think it's a balance between, having a sense of self and knowing what you can do, where you want to go, what your strengths are. But at the same time, it's being able to reflect and seeing how your weaknesses or those things that might be getting in your way are actually doing that. And so I think it's not beating yourself up. It's not shooting all over yourself, telling you yourself the shoulds or how you suck. Instead, I think it's really being able to take a step back and being like, okay, let's do some science. That didn't work. Failure is part of the process. It's not an end result. So how can I take this experience and how can I do better? And I think it's really learning and teaching kids and those kids turn into adults that I work with or teens that I work with, and really slowing themselves down and seeing how these hurdles, these challenges that are getting in their way aren't things to bruise the ego, but instead ways to strengthen it.
My next question, and this is going to be more of a gratitude response to your answer here, Doctor. My next question is specifically, how would you advise someone who is just learning about the video game industry and esports specifically? How would you advise them to go about learning how to handle tilt?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I'd start with, if you're interested in doing mental work, if you're interested in doing, things in psychology or things that I do, or mental health wise, I think the first place you got to start is yourself. And so if you can understand why you get tilted, what causes you to become tilted, what's the process of your tilt, you then become more aware or more empathetic to people who are tilting. And then in those moments, it's not about solving other people's tilts, it's about understanding yours, and using yourself as the tool, as the starting place that you can ask questions or inquiry or exploration for somebody else. Because you can have all the tools and all the techniques and all the strategies, but if you're unaware of what's actually causing that for the other person, all those tools mean nothing. So I think if you really want to understand how to defeat tilt, start with yourself, because if you're able to understand how you are dealing with tilt, where your tilt comes from, you can at least help that next person, that process of discovering it, of understanding it, so they can find their own strategies in solving it. So and mental health as also, like, you start with yourself. If you want to get better at games, like, how do you learn, how do you structure yourself, what habits are you building? So once you have those things in place, now how to help other people versus just diving into somebody else's world.
Your answer gives me a lot of relief because for a long time, I'll go into kind of deep story about how I was overcoming tilt. When I was playing League of Legends years ago, I kind of developed this very contrarian mentality. I was in Platinum 1 and I realized I was never going to climb higher because it wasn't the game that was tilting me anymore. I could improve at the game. I have 1.3 million mastery on Kha'Zix. I'm very experienced with this one champion, and I can, outplay most other people who, aren't professional gamers with this one champion. The problem was the game wasn't enough of a driving purpose for me to improve. I was thinking about esports for me is no longer about winning games on a screen. And so my motto became my mantra, esports isn't about winning games on a screen. And that's when I kind of quit gaming and I started aiming. And that means for me, I wanted to focus on things like my health more. I was going to start doing things in terms of trying to realign my purpose with something that didn't involve attaching my pride, my ego, as you were explaining earlier, to the video game. And so that's when I realized it wasn't the game that was tilting me, it was the lack of purpose.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's one of the first questions I start with all my clients, players, coaches, whoever, is like, why are you here? Like, what do you want to get out of gaming? What purpose does gaming serve in your life? Because, for some people, gaming is an escape. For some people, gaming is a way to improve. For some people, gaming is a way to socially connect with your peers. So really understanding and defining what gaming is doing for you in your life can help you drive that throughout everything. Okay, well, if I see that I can learn in this game, I can learn in my life. If I can, master my mind, I can master my mind in life. Like, there's so many things that happen in gaming that just don't involve the game, but it can be used for whatever you want to be using it for. However, it'd be foolish to say that there's not psychologists on the other side of the screen making, this game something that you want to spend time doing. So, if you don't understand why you're doing it, what you're getting out of gaming, that's where problematic gaming behaviors can come from. You just now start investing and thinking that your worth in the game is who you are as a person, and that's not totally true. They've created a commodity such as LP or ranked points or whatever that don't mean anything in the outside world, but now when you're inside of it, it is something super meaning and super valuable. So you tie, how much you have of this to how much of a person you are. And now things get kind of scary, but we can use kind of it like a tool like fire, where fires can heat your house, you can cook your food, it's really good, it's pretty, but at the same time, if you misuse fire, you can burn down your house, you can burn yourself, you can hurt yourself. But at the same time, unlike a tool, once you're done with fire, it doesn't call you to pick up the fire and play with it again. But gaming, there's so many things inside of it that make you want to play with it. So really understanding what you're trying to get out of gaming, what the purpose of your gaming is, and transferring that into life can be very helpful. But at the same time, not understanding that and doing it passively is kind of dangerous too, or could be dangerous too.
Way I see the application for gaming now in my life is I use it as kind of a social calibration. So I'll take time to download a new game and I'll play it for a few minutes, and then afterwards, I'll never pick up the game again, just because my priority in life now is trying to take the things I learned in gaming, like instead of just focusing on discipline. I don't really need more discipline. I've already been able to discipline myself enough in gaming to kind of get results that I wanted, right? Getting Platinum 1 was great in League of Legends. However, I wanted to get Platinum 1 in something in real life, and I wanted to get a different type of meaning out of the significance of gaming. And so for me, I was thinking about the social calibration, which means, where can I go to experience the quality of social life within the video game world? Because in real life, right, I have all the friends, all the family that I could possibly ever want or need. I'm very blessed and fortunate in that regard. However, in the video game world, a lot of my friends, a lot of my family members have moved on to different games that I don't play. A lot of them still play League of Legends, and I don't really play League of Legends anymore. And so I wanted to think about ways where the attachment that I built up with gaming, in terms of keeping my kind of pride and ego attached to my rank or the LP that I'm achieving each day. I wanted to kind of flip that. I wanted to think about, where can I build up a more efficient and effective attachment in real life that's healthy, whether it's with friends or family, or maybe it's some type of new game opportunity where I can go study an esport, and maybe I could go work at some type of event in esports and gaming. This is something that took me a long time to realize how to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step where you got to start is how are you defining being platinum at something? Like, I think that's something that's really nice about games, is that they define like this is the criteria to get to this next point, or this is what it looks like. And even though there's not a quite like not always a straight path, there is a quantification of what that means. And so it's nice in games because there's achievements, there's quests, there could be levels you hit, or certain statuses that you hit. It's very structured, and something that isn't like that is life. Once you get out of school, it's very structured. Do these things, you pass the class, you get to the next level, right? But sometimes, most times in life, like there isn't that straight, do these things, get this outcome trade-off. Instead, there's not always if you do it all this much time, you're going to get this reward. So I think that's the hard part about life is, well, it's not always as structured. That's why some people like jail. Jail is very structured. Shawshank Redemption, right? Like that's the Red comes out and does really bad in real life because there's not that same structure routine that there is in jail. And so in the same way, like, how are you defining well, first you have to pick what you want to be platinum in. And then second of all, like, how are you defining what platinum looks like after you reach it? And then even after that, like, okay, if that's what it looks like, how are you planning and structuring your day to achieve that thing that you want? And so I think even with gamers and players, like the more structure, the more things I can help them define as, this is things I want to achieve, and then helping them create a plan to achieve it. I guess that's the best way I could like do it, or help them do it, or help define it, is defining that thing, then creating that structure, and then trying to go for it, and then doing science along the way.
One problem I've recently faced with multiple students, clients, or mentees, or even friends and family, is indecision. And so in my personal life, I had to develop ways to make decisions quickly. And so for me, I think about projecting my decision making process, a year and a half into the future about what choices I'm going to make, what type of structure, right? Behaviors, rituals, habits, systems and processes I want to build into my life. And so I have to make these decisions beforehand to make them quickly in the future. And so I think about, a month from now, where do I want to be? How does that environment or peer group look? And then what type of actions do I have to take and kind of reverse engineer that success pattern? Because all of my choices, if I can make them in the present right now, beforehand, a month from now, right, I'll be able to make decisions very quickly, very efficiently. And this is something where I realize not a lot of actual gamers and people in real life, they actually think this way. They think about in the moment, right? There might be anxiety or other things that get in the way of their uh, thought process. And so I was wondering, how do you think about a gamer handling indecision?
Dude, I love these questions. These are really good questions. I'm laughing because it's such a common thing, bro. Like, it's so funny because, like, sometimes with decisions, I mean, if you think about it, esports is all about decisions, split second decisions, game plans, win conditions, like, all these things are decisions, right? And so I think there's two parts of it. The first part is the thing that you're talking about, indecision, making the decision, or the trouble of making or picking a decision, because there's many decisions that you can make. There's very many actions you can take. There's very many variations to the game. Every game is different, which is the best part about esports. And then just when you think you got something correct, they nerf the entire thing and they change everything, and now there's a new champion, or now Kha'Zix sucks and now I have to get splatted all over the map. So the first part about indecision, where I work with players, is like, it doesn't matter what decision you make. The best decision is the one that you go with, like, full-heartedly. And because if you don't go with a decision full-heartedly, you don't know if it's a good one or a bad one, depending on the results. Because if you're like, change your decision halfway through, or you're like kind of half-ass the action after the decision, you don't really know. So taking this back to science, like, you need good data, right? So if you're going to go for it, go for it. If you're going to fail, fail hard. And at least that way we can look at the data and be like, okay, that was bad because of these reasons, and this is exactly what I did, my thought process, versus like, okay, I thought this and I changed it halfway through and then I changed it back, and then it's like, okay, well, we don't know how it would have been if you just went one way or the other. So even with, in a team setting, it doesn't matter what decision a team makes as long as everybody makes that same decision together. So when it comes to decisions or indecisions, my suggestion is picking one, going for it, and just trying to see where it goes. I think the second part is, after the decision was made or mistake was made, it's not about beating yourself about that decision or the mistake or the shoulda, coulda, wouldas that comes. Instead, it's being able to understand it. It's being able to accept it. It's being able to show yourself some grace and move on and learn from it. Because I think that people get stuck in the, oh my God, that was so terrible, I can't believe I did that. And then they become fearful of making decisions in the future, versus, oh, I need to consistently make these decisions and see how they go so I can make better ones in the future. So almost like this decision analysis paralysis, whatever you want to call it. But if it's an anxiety, worry kind of thing, the best treatment for it is always exposure, which means making more decisions and putting in yourself in situations where you have to make decisions. And so indecision, beating yourself up for making these decisions, it's about, not being worried if I'm making the right one, but whatever decision that you're making, that you go for it. And then secondly, showing yourself some grace, accepting it, and moving forward and learning from that decision that you've made. And then also, I think the last one would be like not accepting, but seeing not only the bad decisions that you make, but the good ones too. Because if you are just like remembering all the bad decisions, what are you looking for? You're looking for, I'm a bad decision maker, versus the times that you make good decisions, like, oh, okay, I can see that I'm making better and better decisions the more that I make them, or the more experience that I'm getting making these decisions. So don't only highlight the poor decisions that you're making, but also the successes, the good decisions, the things that you are doing well.
Another question which I'll lead into here is something that I struggled with in my personal life before, because a lot of the youth I work with in terms of of a mentor, or sometimes the business owners and executives I mentor, and I'm working on these, grand companies, and I'm seeing a common theme amongst gamers recently, and it's the fact that a lot of them don't know how to process their trauma very well. And I was wondering, in your experience, doctor, what is something that you would recommend a gamer do to learn how to better process their trauma?
Define trauma for me, my guy.
So trauma for me in this exact context with the environment peer group is, let's say you're a gamer, right? You're 16 years old, you want to become a professional cyber athlete. In your environment, maybe you have a high school esports program, and you can join the high school esports program at 16, graduate at 18 years old, but then you have a traumatic experience, which is, I don't want to get a job. Instead of getting a job, I want to practice for an entire year and, really shoot to become a professional cyber athlete, which, that's a great decision. You've made a clear path, right? You have a defined objective, clarity, where the trauma starts to play in where you don't get the results and good outcomes that you expected within that year, right? And then there's a disconnect between, right, your ego, right, your pride, what you thought you would achieve versus the reality.
Mm, I see. I see. Well, I think with any of those points or those breaks, I think it's really important to think about, you know, well, one, like, why are you doing it? You know, I think it goes back to the purpose, right? Like, okay, if I take a year off of school, I really want to pursue this thing, but it's not going the way that I wanted. Okay, the question then becomes, okay, if it's not going pro, but you still want to go into esports, is there ways that you can leverage the thing that you did over this last year to continue the journey, to continue the path? Because I think when people think about esports and they think about becoming a professional player or whatever, they think about, I have to do this one way or this one thing. Or in esports, there's it's kind of the wild west right now, and there's like a lot of things you can do. And so just because you've taken this year and you've taken this metaphorical L, it doesn't mean it's all for waste unless you waste it. So how do you want to integrate this experience? How do you want to use this experience, and where do you want to go from here? And yes, if it's shocked, okay, it was only a year, bro. Like, you can go and do other things with your time. You can still go back to school if you want to. I really think that the only waste is if you really don't do anything with it. And so again, I think the interesting with trauma too is you and I can experience the same thing. May it be bombs exploding, may it be this not making going pro or what have you. But what makes trauma is not the event, but instead how we interpret it and what the meaning making that we assign to it. So I think it might be you looking back, taking a pause and reworking this in your head, reframing in your head of what you're actually, able to do, what happened to you, and how do you want to use it, or where do you want to go from here? I think that's the best way or the first place you can start, because as soon as we start thinking that this was the worst thing ever, or I wasted my time, or I start, beating myself up for this thing that didn't go my way, okay, yeah, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, versus, okay, this is what I did over the last year. These are the ways that, I've learned and I grew, and this is where I want to go from here. Okay, cool. Now this is just an experience that is going to help push me forward, to help me, figure out what I wanted to do, or cross things off my list, or say things like, I shot for it. I did, I went for it instead of oh man, I wonder what ifs, like, so whatever you want to go from there, or how you want to make meaning from that experience, and then pushing forward. Not saying it's easy, but I think that's the first place to start.
One question that has always been bugging me about the kind of health aspect to esports and gaming is the video game addiction experience. So, how would a cyber athlete or a gamer know when they're addicted versus they just enjoy playing the video game?
It's a good question. So when we're looking at addiction in general, we're looking not just at the behavior, but we're looking at the function of the behavior. So for example, if someone's drinking a lot, I don't just look at, oh my God, that guy is like pounding drinks and he's being belligerent. He has all these DUIs. That person's an alcoholic. But instead, what I look for is like, okay, why is this person drinking? What's causing this person to drink? What's driving this person to do this behavior? So in the same way, when I look at like video game addiction, or I think about, okay, why is this person playing? What is this person getting out of playing that they're not getting in real life? Is this actually taking away from their life, or is video games enhancing their life? And so, when I think about it, I always ask or look for the reasons. And so if you or a player is thinking about, oh man, am I addicted to games? The first thing to think about is really sit them down and think about, why are you playing? Oh, I'm playing because it's, I don't have anything. This is the only thing I'm doing. When I'm sad, I just find myself playing because, I connect with my friends. I don't have to think about the real life things like, okay, maybe we're getting to a slippery slope versus, okay, I really want to get good at this game. This is how this is my practice plan. This is the things that I'm doing to try to improve. This is the things that I'm trying to do in game to improve intentionally. Then I think that's a different kind of mindset or reasons why they're playing. So I think it's time to sit down and really think about, like, why, and are you lying to yourself? Is this something you're actually trying to do, or is this something that you're just using as an escape, or you find yourself doing automatically, or you find yourself not doing IRL things and instead you're finding yourself playing games? And if so, how come? So I think that's where I would start with, gaming addiction, or thinking of, are you addicted? Why are you playing? And being really open and honest with yourself about it.
The more I learn about esports and gaming and just, human behavior, the more I'm puzzled because I think I understand how, a gamer would achieve, a new rank in League of Legends. However, when I look back at maybe the actions of the gamer, I start to think there's a lot of things that don't actually happen within esports, right? As we were talking about on Twitter, right? Esports isn't about winning games on a screen. So, in your experience, what are the actions outside of the game that actually help you win games on a screen?
Let's start with the basics. Let's start with the basics. You need to be eating, you need to be sleeping, you need to be exercising, you need to move your body, you need to be taking care of yourself, just the basics. And with those basics, we need to create some type of structure so you're consistently doing it. The next thing we need to be doing is, like, are you structuring your actual training? Or are you training? Are you just playing? Are you practicing? Or are you, like, just trying to win? Like, are you learning in your games? And so I think, like, those fundamental things already are leaps and bounds, like, would help propel you, like, through the ranks. Then, like, are you actually trying to do things or learn in your games? Like, okay, I'm watching for specific patterns in this game, or I'm looking for interactions in this game, or are you just clicking buttons? So I think the more intentional, the more structure, the more actual learning processes you can put in your game. And of course, on top of that, afterwards, is regulating yourself and your emotions and your thoughts. Like, if you can do that, you're going to do a lot better than most of everybody. Because yeah, you can have great fingers and great mechanics, and that's going to take you far. But if you're unable to understand why those mechanics work and apply those mechanics in different scenarios consistently, you're not going to stay there very long. And so I think, again, sticking to the basics, making those basics routine, and being intentional and learning in your games, I think if you do those things, that would be great. And that means too, like, going to sleep on time, you know, stop playing when you're tilted. All these simple things that gamers don't do are, like, the hugest things that are going to contribute to how they feel in game and how they actually do in climb. But most gamers just think, if I just keep ramming my head through this brick wall, I'm going to get better eventually. And you will. It's just going to feel a lot worse and take you a lot longer.
One thing that has always kind of been on my mind as a gamer, when I was younger, I enjoyed the game for the social aspect, and
Yeah.
I always had the friends and family around me to game with. However, when I'm older and I see the difference in, I suppose, the quality of games that are being produced now, and a lot of them, I just don't enjoy them the same way. And it's not because my friends aren't there; my friends are still gaming. It's just when I'm playing the games, I'm thinking about the social aspect has changed to the point where it's like I enjoy gaming with my friends, but like I don't enjoy gaming by myself.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. People play games for different reasons. Some people, like I said, are like you, and they love the social aspect. Other people love the competing aspect, or the playing aspect, or the visual aspect, or the sounds, or whatever, the music. So it really depends, like what you're playing for, and that's okay. Whatever you want to play for, like, like as long as like you enjoy that, that's good. And find the people that you enjoy playing with, or enjoy the same things with you. I think that's all good, man. Yeah. They don't make them like they used to.
One question I have is, what is one misconception about esports that you think gamers, or that gamers don't really understand yet?
I think the biggest one is they think gaming is just gaming. It's just playing games. And, I think it could be, but, my work with gamers, I take a different approach to performance where I use gaming to, enhance their life. And if I can enhance their life, I can enhance their performance in game too. And so there's a lot of metaphors, there's a lot of actions that people do in their games that they also do in real life, how they relate to people, how they talk to people, how they talk to themselves, how they see the world, how they connect with other people. And so I think that, when people are just playing, they don't realize what they're actually doing and how their internal worlds gets externalized in this game. And so I think if people actually, stopped and took a second to think about why they're doing things, how they're doing things, what they want to get out of, the game or the experience, they could actually really use these games as a way to improve their entire life or see things from a different perspective. I've seen quiet people be absolute monsters in games, plans, comms, but then when they stop playing, they're just like this small little person, and vice versa. I've seen small people in games, but then outside, they're just like this super fun person with lots of thoughts that they don't want to share. And it's like, yo, if we could copy and paste some of these qualities that people, have that they show in their games into their real life, like just think how cool their lives would be, or how different they would be for the better. And so I think it's really fun to, bring those things out of my players and my coaches, or whoever I work with. And so being more intentional and how we can use games and what games could, do for our lives. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, that it's just about playing and getting good. But we can actually get good in real life too.
One of my last questions for you, Doctor, is when you're playing video games and you see something go surprise, right? And you didn't expect it to happen. The response that I see many times in gamers and a lot of people I'm working with is that they don't all see the surprise the same way. Some of them see it as an opportunity. Some of them see it as, the uncertainty gets to them, right? They become anxious. Or there are even some people who I know, and they just don't even know what to think in the moment. They just say it is, right? It just happens. It's kind of like a Buddhist Stoic approach, and they just say it happened to me, and I don't really have a response. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. You don't have a reaction. So, what is it about surprise that can really, make people focus, right? They hit their A game, or sometimes they might not even know how to respond.
Surprise. When I think about surprise, I think about flexibility and creativity. Like when I think about surprise, I think about, it's like you're trying to solve a problem or something, and then a new thing that you weren't thinking about gets introduced into the mix, and you're like, okay, now what is this thing in front of me? I think that, people who do better in those situations, I think, are better at being flexible and in the present, in the moment. But to be flexible, to be creative, you need to have a solid foundation on the fundamentals of the game, or the basics of the game. Because if you don't have a solid, like, understanding of the fundamentals of the basics, it's hard to be creative, because now you have to think really, really hard about how to solve this thing, versus, oh, I've seen this thing before, maybe not this exact thing, but I've seen a version of it. And then in these moments, people don't rise to the level of their abilities, they rise to the level of their training, their unconscious competence, right? So in these moments when you have these things, okay, I don't need to think about it. I'm just going to react because of my database of things that I already know. And so the players who typically are less surprised are the players that are more experienced. And because they're more experienced, they can integrate all those experiences in dealing with this new thing in front of them versus, oh my God, it's all new. So I think, for example, if I was going to take this to like a Halloween example, like I think that people who get more, there's like people just freeze, some people run, some people fight, some people like just scream. And I'm thinking the people who like fight or been in these situations before, they probably like know how to handle themselves, right? Like, okay, I'm not going to run because I'm assessing the situation and I can assess that I can fight this thing versus, okay, I have no idea. I'm gonna run and get the fuck out of here, or I'm freezing. I don't know what to do. All right. So the more situations that you can like be in and have more experience going through or having a solid foundation of what to do in those experiences, I think the more creative, the more flexible, the less surprised you'll be.
Thank you so much for your responses, Doctor. As you wind down here for the last few minutes, I want to ask you, where can people
Mhm.
find you online?
Yeah. So people can find me if they want to like work one-on-one with me or find my resources or whatever. They can, I have to update my website, but you can go to psychsensei.com. I post a lot online on Twitter at the Psych Sensei. I think my Twitch is Psych Sensei or the Psych Sensei on Twitch. I'm trying to stream every Tuesday and Thursday consistently or more consistently now that I'm back and not on any trips. But you can find all my socials on my website psychsensei.com. There you can find my Instagram, my TikTok, my YouTube channel, my LinkedIn, everything there on psychsensei.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doctor. I appreciate all
Likewise,
the
man. Thanks for
feedback
letting me
you've
come.
given.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much. And yeah, keep talking with the kids. That's where I started too. I used to mentor like little sixth graders and things and high schoolers and then continued through college. So yeah, I get it, man. Like appreciate the work you're doing and thank you so much for having me on my show, on your show. Yeah.
All right, I will speak with you very soon with the video upload to YouTube, and
Nice.
I will congratulate you on your streaming schedule. A lot of people don't have one of those.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. All right, man. Well, take it easy. Have a nice day. Okay.
Take care.
Peace. Bye.